President, do we know how many votes we have?
I'm sorry, I didn't look at the votes. We've been desperately trying to get the report done. We'll put it on the website and everybody will be able to do it.
Are there still duplicate ballots?
There are ballots being duplicated.
Okay.
Because we had to meet the timeline, so we'll be able to add those ballots in tomorrow's and Sunday's report.
Can you just comment on completing this by the deadline?
Why the deadline?
No, could you comment on your reaction to completing this by the...
We are excited to be at this point.
Dr. Snipes, can you clarify that, what you just said about there's still duplicates that are going to be added in?
We have
what if they're over under votes for the manual starting tomorrow?
We have the Yokava votes, that's the votes from overseas, and those have to be duplicated.
So the duplications that are still outstanding are overseas and military ballots, not...
Overseas military ballots. That's pretty much it. I don't have the...
Pretty much, or that is
Yes,
it?
as far as I know, that's it. Let me say that. As far as I know, that's it. We've all been working on different facets of getting the report together. But let me just read a statement to this lady.
You do it on the mic?
Oh, sorry. This is a statement that just this is a statement that sort of ties together some of the questions that we had earlier this week. And the statement reads, the canvassing board decided that 23 of 205 provisional ballots previously canvassed were invalid votes under Florida Statutes 101.048, Marines 2, and the remainder of those votes, 182, were determined to be valid. Because I cannot determine which 23 ballots were invalidated due to commingling of ballots, I've determined to count all 205 votes in the second unofficial upload of the state. I understand that at the end of the certification process, that if 23 votes have significance in changing or places in doubt the result of the election, then that would be a proper election contest issue. The reason I'm submitting all 225 votes, as I mentioned to you several days ago, is that it would be unfair to disenfranchise all remaining voters who properly cast their vote. However, those 205 votes have been and will continue to remain segregated from all other votes, both logically and physically. I've also decided that 25 ballots whose pages were canvassed for voter intent will also be included in the second unofficial upload to the state, that is today. However, these 25 votes have been and will continue to remain segregated from all other votes. Again, it's my responsibility to make sure that validly cast votes are not disenfranchised. Thank you.
News alert, if you can believe it, the election disaster in Florida just got a little worse, with Broward County missing the deadline to turn in their recount total by, yes, just 2 minutes. That means the new totals get thrown away. So what was the point of what they were doing for days? According to Rick Scott's campaign, that was not an accident. The Republican is claiming they did it on purpose because his numbers would have improved. Our correspondent Phil Keating has a story live from Riviera Beach, Florida. Good evening, Phil.
Good evening, Ed. The highly memorable 2018 Florida election machine recount is now over, and now the humans take over. In most races, it's already decided the margin of victory was large enough. However, in a few races statewide, including that U.S. Senate race between Governor Scott and Senator Bill Nelson, it is under 0.25%. That's the margin of difference. Therefore, humans will be in here tomorrow, 11 a.m. in Palm Beach County, to begin going over roughly 6,000 ballots, which were problematic and not counted because they either had undervotes or overvotes. Now, that machine recount actually showed Republican Rick Scott gaining in votes and his lead over the original results. Scott now leads Nelson by 0.15%. Hand counters will now go through all those problematic ballots, and in the also closely watched governor's race, the recount results stayed almost exactly the same, just one vote difference, with Republican former Congressman Ron DeSantis leading Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum by 0.41%. That's high enough to avoid a hand count. This afternoon, the DeSantis campaign released this statement, quote, Those returns remain clear and unambiguous, just as they were on election night and at every point throughout this process. I remain humbled by your support and the great honor the people of Florida have shown me as I prepare to serve as your next governor. While Broward County celebrated after midnight when it thought it had completed its last ballot recount, well, today election staffers uploaded their results to the state 2 minutes too late. At 3:02, they were due at 3 o'clock. So original numbers will be the ones made official. And in the words tonight of a not-so-happy staffer, quote, "I worked my ass off for nothing." Palm Beach County failed to make the recount deadline, period. And the supervisor of elections blames the machines.
Well, I will explain it to say that I believe strongly that it wasn't not a human effort, it was mechanical. And so we're required to present a report to the Secretary of State, and that's exactly what I'm going to report.
But because of that breakdown in the machines, Senator Nelson tonight suing for a hand recount of all ballots in Palm Beach County. Attorney Mark Elias with the Nelson campaign said this in a tweet: "We have sued Palm Beach County and the Florida Secretary of State to require a hand count of all ballots in the county due to systematic machine failure during the machine recount." Now, the hand count will now get fully underway here in Palm Beach, 11 a.m. tomorrow. Other counties around the state, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Results of the hand count are due now, Secretary of State, on Sunday. Ed.
Phil Keating working his reporter's notebook off for us tonight. Phil, thank you. Joining me now, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, a Republican who has literally been trying to force his way into some of those offices in Broward County to get some answers. He joins us live tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming in.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ed.
I want to get to the Senate mess because it seems the biggest one tonight. But before I forget, is it time for the Democrat Andrew Gillum in the governor's race to concede? Because as Phil just reported, they're counting, they're recounting, and only one vote has changed, and he's down.
Yeah, absolutely. Governor-elect Ron DeSantis is going to do a great job for Florida. Andrew Gillum's continuation of this charade really is undignified. I think he ought to concede immediately. And you see with some of these instances, whether it's Stacey Abrams, Andrew Gillum, or maybe others, where they're trying to enhance their celebrity by not conceding. And that's not really good for democracy. We all ought to be willing to accept the results of the voters. And here that was clearly for Ron DeSantis.
All right, let's get to the Senate race. From what I understand, and you heard in Phil's reporting, that particularly in Broward County, it looks like Democrat Bill Nelson lost roughly 700 votes after their recounting, and so they're supposed to turn that in, and they missed the deadline by 2 minutes. Rick Scott, the Republican, his campaign, which you support obviously, is saying tonight they did that on purpose because they don't want to admit that Bill Nelson is losing votes.
Well, this circumstance arises because there is a discrepancy in the number of votes that went through the unofficial count initially and then those which were counted by the recount. It's a discrepancy of over 2,000 ballots. And when you actually evaluate those, Rick Scott does rather well within that pool of ballots. And so he's understandably frustrated that some staff member has this report go in 2 minutes late and then he's unable to benefit from that. Ed, at the end of the day, I think that really Rick Scott's win is also outside the margin of fraud, but it demonstrates that challenge. And there's new reporting out of the Washington Post that Broward Supervisor of Elections official was saying that the reason that that discrepancy exists is because the ballot pool was polluted by ballots that were not supposed to be counted.
But Congressman, as you know, we've been lectured for days that we have to, quote unquote, count all the votes. Now we count the votes, and it looks like it's not helping the Democrat, so the paperwork's not turned in. Is it count all the votes?
It shows the hypocrisy. Yeah, it really shows the hypocrisy of Senator Nelson's argument. He is suing in a variety of other counties throughout the state, saying, oh, we have to count every vote under any circumstance. And now, as a result of a clerical error that neither Rick Scott nor the people who voted for him could control, potentially a universe of over 2,000 ballots, giving Rick Scott more than a 700 vote additional boost to his lead. I mean, that would not be democratic, but it's indicative of these broad problems we have with compliance with the law in Broward and Palm Beach counties.
Congressman, on the other hand, there's a Republican, as you know, former Congressman Joe Walsh, who has heard your comments saying that this is a dry run for Democrats to, quote unquote, steal the election from Donald Trump in 2020. And he is saying, wait a second, this is irresponsible and dangerous of you.
Yeah, Joe Walsh was the member of Congress who went on Sacha Baron Cohen's television show, looked directly in the camera, and said toddlers should have firearms. So I probably won't take too much of his advice on what constitutes irresponsible rhetoric. I don't take my marching orders or my P's and Q's from somebody who doesn't have enough sense not to read inflammatory and dangerous material that's put in front of them.
I've got less than 30 seconds. How does this Senate battle end? Not just with who you think is going to win, but what's the reasonable timetable now? There's a hand recount, is that right?
Yeah, there'll be a hand recount. That takes a while with 8 million ballots to go through and count, but ultimately it ends with Rick Scott being sworn in as the senator. And then hopefully, Ed, we can actually work together, Republicans and Democrats, diagnose these problems, and then demand greater transparency along the way. The best antidote to fraud is transparency, and so if you force everybody to turn the cards face up earlier in the process, you don't have a circumstance where you got 80,000 ballots with a very dubious chain of custody.
Congressman Gates, appreciate you coming in tonight.
Thank you.
All right, coming up.
I thank you. God bless you, and may he continue to bless the nation that has showered this land with love for more than 2 centuries. Thank you all. God bless you all.